experience learning efficiency or productivity by students? You want them to learn a certain concept. Does visualization help them not only to reach that understanding, or do you feel that they can understand faster and make them be more curious?
Yes, I encounter, because when I was given to implement this gaming, I had a zero knowledge of gaming. I took this task as a challenge because I know the children are very prone to this kind of gaming, because I have 2 sons at home, so they are addicted to this kind of gaming. So I just took this 3D maze and implemented in my classroom. So really, when we deal with STEM and the shape students combined together in the classroom, some of them has zero knowledge about the coding, and other set has excellent knowledge about the coding. So how to mingle them? If you observe, after doing this coding part, which involves basic visual text coding, the shape students, we collected the surveys and the questionnaires, we found lot of interest, and student found coding or this visualization gives them a lot of a personalized learning. Without the knowledge of coding also, they could get engaged in the classroom activities. You can see their engagement in the classroom, in the bigger setting also, and nobody is listening to the tutor, everybody is engaged in the activity.
I've used the virtual reality and augmented reality tools for senior training for them to use automated services like ATM machine to withdraw cash or the self-checkout kiosk in the supermarket. I don't know about whether these tools can help them to learn fast, but at least the curiosity and then their desire to learn more about this, or their intention to continue the training, or even to try out the actual automated services. We have the data to show that, yes, these tools work, right? So it really helped them to see actually themselves trying those services. Probably the biggest fear is social pressure. When they try to learn these machines, automated services, they fear that people line up behind them, queuing, and they cannot really take that kind of social pressure, right? But in this kind of simulator training programs, they don't have to worry about them. So at the beginning, no one is queuing, but then after the people get used to the training, we can increase this level slightly more. So maybe 1 person is lining up, and then 3 people lining up, and then 10 people lining up. Or even the noise level, no noise at all, but then the street noise, and then people started to complain, hey, why it takes so long, right? Then people can get used to this kind of real life social pressure and knows how to deal with that. So this is a technique used to treat the people who have been traumatized with certain events. Slow exposure to the actual trauma will help them to overcome the traumas.
It's not just curiosity, but also fulfilling others' emotional barriers. What are some of the key challenges in implementing the platform that you went through? You could share with your experiences in both the project level or at the managerial administrative level.
In terms of implementing it, actually, the big challenge that I found was that students are actually very reluctant to try new things, because it couldn't be mandatory for the students when it's part of the project. So I resorted to giving them bonus points for their problem set when they actually use the web app. Now that the project's over, I actually just make it mandatory. Maybe about 20% of the problem set is dedicated to using the web app to actually create the molecules, by making them submit an assessment based on using it. And also because the assessment asks them to create new molecules, so I don't need to worry that they're using ChatGPT or some other thing to actually answer the question, because ChatGPT wouldn't know how to use this web app.
I think create content is challenging, especially create content with scientific accuracy and in the lower cost kinds of settings. We always have issue, money never enough.
That was the challenge, creating the content and how to give a continuity in our each week's tutorial to have 11 weeks of tutorials, and for each modules we have 7 modules, different modules. So how to join them together and taking this 3D maze as a main platform. So we did that one. And another challenge, if you ask me, was the technical wise, because we deal with 3,000 students per semester, 3,000 cohort it is. So I think nearly 70 tutorials. So you can imagine how much work the technical support has done at the back end. Loading issue was the main thing for us. I think, of course, you people, the one who helped us, CITS and the research team from 3D Maze. So a lot of effort went in there for supporting the loading issue. So how we overcame that issue is, initially we told the students to, it is a group activity, so we made one member from the each team to log in, and so after 10 minutes another person will log in. So we are just trying out, it's a trial and error method, you can say. So but you can see our students, when you see some gaming platform, nobody listens to the tutors, so they just log in, and later part it happens like it's lagging somewhere. But we overcame that, so it's a learning process for us also. Yeah.
When you're designing content, is this something that you're asking yourself, okay, I'm going to design something that will last 3 semesters, 2 semesters? Or is it something that I'll do something first and then I'll figure a way out with time and resource to enhance it?
When I have the opportunity, then I think about then what part of the content can be visualized, so at least it doesn't have to be frequently updated, right? The panelists just share the challenges that we often face in creating the content, and then, yes, keeping it sustainable. If we create something nice, but then it has to be changed in every semester, but then we don't update it for 3 years, then what good is that for education? Content creation requires more than just the technical part, right? We need the content experts who know the content, and we need the technical team who can design these tools. But this technical team consists of the computer scientists or engineers who can do the coding, but also artists who can do the illustration. So a lot of people need to be involved. We need the education experts who can come up with the aligning, matching pedagogical tools that can best utilize these tools. And then we need somebody who can coordinate all these. So it's a very complicated process, but hopefully with the emergence of generative AI, this content creation could be a bit easier to do.
How do you think, or if any at all, the possibility that Gen AI is being complemented with visualization tools?
So what we did was, we asked the ChatGPT to create a maze, 3D maze, and asked the ChatGPT to solve that 3-dimensional maze. So if you see that, our intention was 2 ways. Teach the students pros and cons, the strength and weakness of that ChatGPT. So you can't blindly believe what the ChatGPT gives, the output. So what happened in our tutorial was, like, student used to ask the ChatGPT to create a maze using grid and the symbols we have to give, because it's a 2-dimensional maze it creates. Then we asked the ChatGPT to solve the maze also. Yes, the ChatGPT was telling some nice sentences, telling that go here, go there, so it is solving. So students believed that. But when we told the students to put that solution back in the 3D maze platform and check, so it is actually not solving. Then students went ahead, one step ahead, asked the ChatGPT to give a Python code. Okay, ChatGPT gave the Python, nice Python code. Then I asked them to put that Python code and try in the 3D maze. So we asked them, so it is not solving. So that actually showed, our intention was to show the student that don't believe blindly this ChatGPT. So like, you should know where to stop, when to stop, how much to use. We need to have something, our own thinking or concept learned, we need to apply there. So that's how we implemented ChatGPT and combined with this 3D maze platform.
Should AR/VR learning activities have strong alignment with summative assessments or even high stake? If you were to use it as an assessment tool, do you think that can promote the purposeful use of that technology? And how well should it align with assessments at all?
I think that's where the web app that I created may be slightly different from my colleagues, because it's a tool for helping students to actually create instead of a tool where they just absorb information. So in fact, when I created that, I was aware that there already exists certain websites where there's like a database of molecules that exist that actually like even shows all those symmetry elements and everything all on the website. What I felt was important was for the students to actually be able to do in order to actually learn. And that's why the web app is actually a way for them to actually create the molecule and then insert the symmetry elements by themselves. And from there, they can save those. I also wanted to have some way to assess them to see whether they could actually use the web app. And this is a way that I can still get them to learn while assessing them at the same time.
When we talk about assessment, we need to think about the expected outcomes, and the assessment has to be aligned with the outcomes, right? So when the expected outcomes are things like students need to master certain process correctly, then definitely, I guess, the virtual reality, augmented reality system can be used to see how long it takes for students to complete the task, or how many errors that they make, and so on. So then it can be directly used for the assessment. But in addition to that, I'm from communication school. So when we train our students to be journalists, I guess the assessment has to be like traditional writing, right? We give the scenario and ask students to write the story in 1 hour, right? Or nowadays, even it has to be like in 5 minutes, they come up with a story. But anyway, but instead of just telling students the scenario in the text, then why don't we give them the VR tool so that students can be in the scene of the accident, right? They can look around the 360 degree. That could really, again, close the distance, make it more relevant to them, then perhaps they can really write the stories well, right? So then it can be, again, used as kind of complementary assessment tool that really helps students to see the relevance better, right?
Assessment itself is evolving very fast. Traditionally, we have summative assessment. And now we have formative assessment. And there are something called, I mentioned earlier, skills assessment. Actually, it is a hidden kind of assessment. Why? Because VR system actually knows whether the student is doing the right things. So why not we make the process of assessment become hidden in the learning journeys? And we will actually have, especially for those skill kinds of training. For instance, my team actually developed an assessment kit, which is able to analyze our students' kinds of experiment skill, assemble or disassemble jet engines, hydraulic system. And of course, assessment is only one part of the game. The other part, I think equally important, is the debriefings. When you have hundreds of students using VR, AR doing their learnings, so at the end of the day, if you can use the same VR system to tell them, okay, what is the wrong things you have chosen? What are the correct way? What are the sequence? So this way, maybe we can actually give better feedback to the student.
I've asked the panel members beforehand to give me one line, one sentence of advice or learning points to the audience about AR, VR.
Okay, I think it's a collaborations. VR and AR visualization series game is not one man show, one team shows. Over the year, actually, we have been working very closely with different schools, different departments, and it works. So I believe this is a sustainable kind of models.
I think that the AR and VR is truly interdisciplinary. So while watching Prof. Tsai's demonstration, it made me inspired to try to see whether I could find more ways in which chemistry can actually work together with him to actually come up with ways where we can introduce AR and VR for my own students.
Through my experience, this visual tool, when I implemented, I found we can increase the student engagement in the classroom setting. and definitely it increases the teamwork. And I could see in my classroom there, I think the gap between the STEM and the SHAPE disciplines has drastically reduced.
Yeah, I think it's the VR, AR, and other technological tools are just tools. It's just the mode of the delivery. And we need to think of a big picture, the content, the mode of delivery, the person who delivered the message, and the person who received the message, and so on.
As we move forward, first of all, both students and faculty members experimenting, piloting on this type of technology needs to be in a safe environment. Safe in a sense where you can take risk with very limited or little consequence. Because if we cannot push the envelope, we can never see how far we can stretch.
I was very intrigued by Prof. Bo or Prof. Jung's comment on the VR, use of it to even treat people, individuals, trauma by simulating the situation. And then the remark on the reporter imagining actually seeing the scene. And then your last remark about, especially for the assessment, made me curious. The outcome, learning outcome in communication is eventually writing a news article, for example. In that case, I just asked ChatGPT, imagine you're in a traffic accident. Can you write a news article describing some, with emotional tension, you as a reporter are seeing the scene. And it created, like, as you can imagine, a decent article. I guess there's a challenge. What is your way to do the assessment? Do you encourage even work together with GenAI, or do you have a unique way to filter out and then ensure that they come up with their own?
That's a very good question, and that perhaps need the whole day of another conference to discuss. I think finding the good balance is very important. When the search engine was first introduced, some people argued that students shouldn't use that, but rather they had to go to the library, look for the references in the conventional manner. They needed to learn how to find the references in that way, right? So many argued that we should ban the use of search engine in the university. But of course, it didn't happen. We can't really stop the current, right? Just like that, I think many of us believe that, yes, the arrival of generative AI really changed a lot of things, not only in educational setting, but also the way we work. At the same time, some of the things, as I mentioned, some of the building block knowledge, we still need to train our students. So we approach in two different ways. So if it's really about writing course, to really teach our students to learn how to write, we go with the traditional paper pencil writing assessment. But if it's not about that, but to teach students, of course, communication is more than just journalism, but let's stay with the journalism example. If the training purpose is to train our students to be journalists, to identify certain things, for example, in addition to the writing itself, reporter needs to identify whom to interview from the scene, right? That kind of skills can be better learned, better assessed with this kind of VR tool, right? Then why don't we combine the two? So we have different courses. Some of the courses teach traditional writing, grammar, and the logic. But some other courses, we have a VR in journalism course where, yes, students learn some basic skills, how to generate the content, but at the same time, how to utilize these tools to master their skills to be a journalist. So I think we are still learning how we can really balance and find the sweet spot so that our students can learn also how to utilize these emerging tools to be the cutting edge. Nowadays, the journalists, the situation is that they, although it sounds like a joke, they need to come up with a story in less than 5 minutes and post them on the internet right away. Then if we ask them to forget the generative AI and come up with your own story, they can't really survive in the field, right? So then our students need to learn how to use, but not to heavily depend on the generative AI. So then what's the sweet spot? We are experimenting a lot.